Hello and welcome to this special presentation of Crusader Sports Network. I'm Thomas Hatfield.
And I am Jackson Amarosa, and today we will be breaking down the upcoming basketball season.
Yeah, definitely. Now let's start with how the team did last year. So finished 9-5 in district, 16-11 overall, which was good enough for a fourth place finish in district. They were 5 games ahead of fifth place Elsick. They lost in the second round of the playoffs to Atascocita, but it was by no means a bad season at all. They had 2 win streaks of 4 and 5 games respectively. And Jackson, I would say last year was quite the success for the Crusaders.
Yeah, it was. Last year being, the year during COVID, it was very difficult, to overcome, those, boundaries. They played in masks. They had people in and out of the season due to, positive tests, close contact, things like that, were difficult. But overall, they, had a very tough schedule non-district wise and a very tough district, with those top 3 teams being very good, into the playoffs, deep into the playoffs. And so to make the playoffs, to make it past the first round and to face a tough Atascocita team who is still nationally ranked, 40th, I believe. So, and to, to come up short in that game, but to return this year with some of those same impact players from last year it makes me really, really happy and really excited for the upcoming year because I think it could go very well for this Strake Jesuit team.
Yeah, and we do play Atascocita in our non-district slate. And it will also be a home game, so you will be able to catch that on Crusader Sports Network. But speaking of the schedule, it is another tough schedule for the Crusaders.
Yeah, it really is, Thomas. And that's kind of part of the MO for the Crusaders. They play a tough non-district schedule to prepare them for a tough district. And by doing that, it may not look great in the win-loss category, but it prepares the team. It allows the team to face some tough competition early in the season and work through that, build the team chemistry, build what works on offense, what doesn't work, what works on defense, what doesn't work. And that way, when you go to district, it's a little bit easier to adapt. Whereas if you play easier teams early, it makes it down the stretch a little bit tougher when you face teams like Pearland Dawson, Pearland, Shadow Creek. Those teams that are really going to push you in district play.
Yeah, definitely. And another mark by the end of COVID is a return to the basketball tournament scene for the Crusaders. And they are returning with 3 big tournaments to start out the year. They're playing in the NEISD tournament, the Carlisle Kruger Classic, and probably the biggest tournament they've been in quite a while, the Governor's Challenge, which is a national showcase tournament up in Maryland, and they are playing some of the top teams in the country. So that will definitely be a huge test for them.
Yeah, anytime you go out of state, you're going to be facing some top level competition from all around the country. To bring it back a little bit, the NEISD tournament's coming up. It's actually late next week, heading into Thanksgiving break up in San Antonio. So they're going to be facing some good teams there, particularly Madison will be someone they play out there who's good and will be a good test following the season opener at home. Moving on to, like you said, the Carlisle Kruger Classic, that's going to be in, Clear Creek is going to be a team that they're going to face out in that one. Another good team. Once again, we're stressing they have a tough schedule to open it, and when they travel during Christmas break up to Annapolis, they're going to be facing some very, very tough teams, like you said. And like you said, also, it's going to be a showcase. It's going to allow these players who have their sights set on the next level to show their talent, their ability to play to some scouts that might be in the area. Just some teams that they're going to be playing. I'm looking at the schedule right now. They're going to be playing a team from Charlotte, a team from in-state in Maryland. So teams like that, from around the state that they don't have any info on. They're not going to be looking at film or anything. It's going to be tough, to go in there in an atmosphere they're not used to. But it'll be really fun to watch these guys, try and put on a show at that stage.
Yeah, definitely. And another big challenge for the Crusaders in their non-district play will be most of their non-district games will not be in the competition gym. A majority of their non-district games will be on the road. So they're going to have an uphill battle in front of them, especially on the road.
Yeah, once again, you put yourself out there early in the season. You go force yourself to compete in a difficult atmosphere at some of these places that draw a huge crowd, and some of these young guys. This team is filled with some youthful talent that haven't really seen a lot on the varsity stage, especially considering last year there weren't big crowds at all. So, you give these juniors, these sophomores, you haven't really been, acquainted with the harsh crowds of varsity play, to go out, to places like Byron Nelson, Klein Oak, who they're going to face early in the year, and, get them, kind of in that atmosphere of being away in a tough crowd environment. That way, when you travel to Pearland Dawson and Pearland, it's a little bit easier on those guys, and they aren't fazed by it. So I think that's part of the thinking to make that non-district play, really difficult.
Yeah, and we were talking about how going back to the tournaments a little bit, we were talking about how the Governor's Classic was really an actual showcase. It's not only a team showcase, but also a prospect showcase. And switching over to the player side of things, Strake Jesuit, if you've been watching any of their games or watching the team, you would know that we have one of the top prospects to come out of Strake Jesuit basketball in quite a while, and that guy is Jace Posey.
Yeah, if that last name sounds familiar, it should, because James Posey, his father, was an NBA player, so he's got the talent. And last year he was able to gain the experience playing as a varsity player, towards the end of the year as a varsity starter, in those games, taking a large role as a young sophomore. So this year I'm really excited to see how he does, really leading this team as a junior, into these games, into these big environments, like you said, Indianapolis. But he has what it takes. He's athletic, he's a good teammate, he plays defense, he's a good scorer, he has, great pace, right? He's composed, he's calm, he doesn't really feel the pressure like maybe, you would think he does, being the son of an NBA player. But, he's a great guy to have on your team. And, we're going to get into some stats here. So he led the team in a lot of major categories last year: points per game, rebounds per game, assists per game, steals per game. So, he's all over the place. He's going to get it done for you, when you need it most. So I'm really looking forward to seeing this guy play throughout the year.
Yeah, and let's shift to talking about the team itself. Obviously, the big loss of Edgar Romero, one of the better players we've had in quite a while. That loss will definitely be felt at guard, but I would say Jace is going to fill his shoes quite well going forward. But now let's kind of talk about the team itself. So obviously, this is going to be a very young team, a lot of juniors who are going to be getting starting minutes for the Crusaders. Jace Posey, Drayton Jones, Trevor Lombard, just some of those names that are going to be getting a lot more time this year.
Yeah, if I could pick someone who I would expect to have, a big breakout year, it would be Drayton Jones. He is, 6'8", possibly 6'9". He grows by the day. But as a junior, he is, a rim protector, an alley-oop machine, someone who can get down the floor into the paint and disrupt the opponent's ability to drive to the basket. I think he got some experience last year as a young player, but now along with Jace, as they begin to lead this team into their upperclassmen years, he's going to really have to step up and, play on both sides of the ball, really. He wasn't, maybe had the most points last year, but he was definitely, in the game, on the defensive side. But I think to take his game to the next level, he's going to have to get in, into the game on the offensive side, really start to produce, points-wise. But I think he will do that, as he progresses throughout the year as his second year as a varsity player.
Yeah, definitely. And you were talking about how Drayton Jones was 6'8", and height is something that the Crusaders do not lack. 8 out of the 13 players on the varsity squad are 6'3" or taller. And that height advantage, I think, is really going to come in play. You talked about defensively in the paint, and especially getting that jump shot advantage, especially outside the arc.
Yeah, and we haven't talked a lot about the seniors, but Aaron Rucker, another guy with height, he's around 6'7". He's a 3-year varsity player, and he has improved each year. He's gotten a little bit better. He's gotten a little better around the rim as a finisher. He continues to play his heart out on defense. So a guy like him working in tandem with Drayton, both, as they play together on the floor, and then as you switch minutes, you come in with fresh legs and stuff. I think he'll also be able to get in there and be a guy, Jace Posey or Trevor Lombard or Connor Sauer can really find down in the paint and get you some easy buckets. But kind of moving on to some other seniors that I'm looking forward to seeing. Nico Murr, Connor Sauer, those guys who have also been playing, a few years on the varsity, will this year get the chance to lead the team as seniors, and those guys had impressive years last year as well. Connor Sauer really jumped out as someone who you can go to, especially early in the year when Edgar was not there. He hunts shots. He's really going to try and find some shots, find the open lanes, along with Nico, who's also, one of the greatest rebounders on the team as well, both offensively and defensively. I think when he improves his shooting, which he has, I think he'll also be able to produce on both sides of the ball as well.
Yeah, and you were talking about Trevor Lombard there, but unfortunately, his loss will be felt. As you may have seen around campus, he has been on crutches. He does have an apparent leg or knee injury. No timeline for when he's going to be back, but his loss is definitely going to be felt, Jackson.
Yeah, no, I agree. As another young guard, who has, possibly the greatest ability to shoot outside of maybe Connor Sauer, Ryan Chang, those guys, I think, early in the year, they'll definitely miss him. And I look forward to seeing him because I think he's also grown as a player, from his first years as varsity player last year to now. I think once he gets back healthy, he'll once again help this team either as a starter or off the bench.
Yeah, definitely. And now you were talking about how we have a lot of away games, and we were talking about that. But now then we have only about two home games from November to December. But then once we get to December 21st, we have our third home game of the season, which is also our district opener against Pearland. So a huge start to district play there, considering they edged us out in point differential, even though we both had 9-5 records.
Yeah, I mean, we opened to Pearland last year, and guess what happened? We lost. And that tie record, they got the tiebreaker, right? Because in the head-to-head, like you said, they took the third spot, we got the fourth spot, which made our trek into the playoffs a little bit harder. But this is a huge game, like you said, opening the district at home in front of a home crowd. I think it'll be very important to start the year off with a win, because that after that game they're gonna end up traveling out to Annapolis. So you open it with a district win. Hopefully you get to go out to Annapolis, have some fun, play in front of some big crowds with big players, big teams there, and then you bring it back down to Houston, where you then go on the road to Alief Hastings and then back home to Shadow Creek, who another team that is going to be really, really important to beat and compete with if we want a shot at second place or possibly even winning the district, as Shadow Creek was the team to beat last year in District 23.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, beating teams like Pearland Dawson, Shadow Creek, and Pearland themselves, that's going to be so important if they want to lock up the district this year and really have a much easier road to making it to state. And District 23 6A, we were talking about how it's a disparity district a bit earlier on today. And if you've listened to the Vipe U podcast with Will Turboff, go check that out. It's really, really good, high quality stuff. But anyways, District 23 is really the antithesis in a lot of sports of what we like to call a disparity district. The playoff teams and the bottom feeding teams, there is a huge disparity especially between 4th and 5th when we were talking about that earlier. Elsick 5 games back, and I mean, if you're the Crusaders, you really got to be liking your chances this year.
Yeah, I think it wouldn't be, out of the, stretch of the imagination to say that they're going to make the playoffs this year if they're able to stay healthy. But once again, that can't be the expectations. Like, we made the playoffs last year. We got to the second round. This year, with a lot of returning players, a lot of returning impact players, we should push the boundaries a little bit. And the way you do that is you win at home against Pearland, first game of the year. Or maybe, you go away and beat Dawson. Like, those are the types of games that if you put together and win, you're going to make the playoffs a lot more, fun to see, because you're going to play people that, in the first, second round that you can beat and then possibly advance further into the third round regional tournament like that. But yeah, like you said, the teams that are going to be, fighting to take us out of the playoffs, Alief Taylor, Alvin, Alief Elsick, Hastings, those teams want it bad. Like, they didn't make it last year. They're going to try and take us out this year. And you can't just, go into those games thinking, okay, I got this locked up. Like, those are harsh environments, to go play in, especially away. And if we drop any of those games, we become vulnerable to getting knocked out of these playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. You were talking about it, and I mean, for teams like Hastings and Elsick, really beating Strake Jesuit is going to be one of the keys to being able to make the playoffs, considering that Strake has really been especially for some sports, has been the gatekeeper to that 4th seed for quite a bit in past years especially. So getting up to number 3 will take a lot of pressure. 3 and higher will take a lot of pressure off of Strake Jesuit.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's tough. Last year they were able to, get past the first round, but then they had to play Atascocita, which, was a very, very difficult game that did not end the way the Crusaders wanted it to. But, you get past Clear Springs, in the first round, and maybe you play someone who's not, at Atascocita's level. And, but the way you do that is to get first, second place in the district, which I believe that they are capable to do. They have the pieces, they have, the determination. If they can stay healthy, I think that's not out of the imagination yet. But let's to kind of wrap this up, we can kind of, break down the schedule a little bit more. So like we said, they opened with Memorial. We've opened with them the past 4 years dating back to 2018, but we are 1-3 with our only win of that kind of rivalry building. Our only win came last year, but Memorial made the playoffs last year. They're looking to improve as well, so that's going to be a fun game at home that we're going to open with. You play a team for a few years straight, you start to build a rivalry. This game starts to have expectations, even though it's non-district, it's a season opener. But I think that's a game, that we need to win, to kind of even the score in that rivalry, but then also kind of build momentum moving into tournaments. But, kind of continuing on, what do you think of, these teams, Koppel, Byron Nelson, that are going to be really tough? How do you think we stack up against them away? I mean, those are some tough games. What do you think, are going to be, I guess, the ways we beat those teams on the road early in the season? What do we need to establish in order to do that?
One thing that we need to establish is, and I will talk about this a lot this season, establish the young guys as threats to be reckoned with. You're going to want to establish those guys as guys who will come out there every single day and start, because they're not going to be just going to be starting this year. They're going to be starting next year as well. So you really have to establish them as players on the scene, like Jace Posey, Drayton Jones, Trevor Lombard, already players that have kind of been established, but this is their year to really make their mark. And I think getting them to be consistently good will be one of the keys to winning those games.
Yeah, I think another thing that you need to establish early, and they struggled with it last year, is turnovers. We averaged almost 20 a game, 19 and a half a game. That is not what, Coach Amarosa wants out of this team, especially early. If you can establish kind of the discipline to take care of the ball early, it's gonna pay dividends later in the season when you can limit those turnovers. And when you're going up against teams that are really, really good, Koppel, Byron Nelson, that you're gonna open with, on the road, that's gonna be really, really important to limit those turnovers in order, to make that game competitive and possibly, with a win.
Yeah, not to mention Katie Tompkins in the final non-district game away, former district opponent back when we were still in District 19. And that will no doubt be a big performance there. So before we wrap up, any final thoughts you have on this season?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Moving on from football, they had a good year. Now into basketball, I'm looking, I have high expectations. I think last year, with all the problems, the difficulties last year, I think this year coming in, with some firepower with Jace Posey, Drayton Jones. But I think the emphasis this year is going to be, how do the seniors lead this team? Aaron Rucker, Connor Sauer, Nico Murr, Ryan Chang. How are they going to get it done, with the juniors who still lack a little bit of experience? How are they going to, pull this team together to get wins on the road at Pearland, Dawson, Shadow Creek, early in the year at Klein Oak or Stratford? Teams that we beat last year, we're going to need to have that same drive to beat this year. And I think if we can get off to a good start, especially with Memorial, I think we're looking good for district. I would think, like you said, I think if we stay healthy, we'll see the playoffs. But I'm looking third, second place, possibly even winning the district. If we are able to put up a fight against those guys, at Dawson and Shadow Creek and Pearland. But those are all my thoughts on the day. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to calling those games, at home. But I think it'll be a fun year, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, definitely. Be sure to subscribe to the SJet News YouTube channel if you have not already, to stay tuned for all of our broadcasts for the basketball season and all of our sports. Be sure you don't miss any of that. Our home opener is our season opener as well. It will be November 16th at 7 p.m. against Memorial at home. Be sure to watch out for that stream on the SJet News YouTube channel, and be sure to make it out to that game and support our boys. Well, that's all we have for you for this basketball preview. I'm Thomas Hatfield.
And I'm Jackson Amarosa, and thank you for joining us, and have a great day.
We will see you on Tuesday.